The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 167 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Chris. You may have noticed I'm kind of wearing extra layers today. My wife refuses to put the heating on until October, right? Can you believe it? There's a cost of living crisis. Don't you know that's going on?
Oh dear. Yes. Well, of course, we always record on video. I know many people just plugging us in, listening to the audio version, but yes, we have the video. So do hit the Wealth Builder socials. Make sure you're following us on Instagram and Facebook and all those usual places. And you can see a little bit of behind the scenes of us recording this podcast. Mm-hmm. So we're back today and we have a guest who is a well-known guest to us, and that's Carol Robinson, who's one of our wealth coaches in the Wealth Builders Academy. And Carol, in her own right, is a successful businesswoman, investor, and developer.
Well, and always getting top marks from our members when she delivers her coaching style, which is, you know, unique and different, but very much appreciated by our membership. And I think she's getting like 9.5 and 10s out of 10.
Absolutely.
Recently. So she's doing a great job, and we really enjoy her being in our community on the inside.
Yeah, and Carol is an inspiring lady in a male-dominated environment, which is development. And this was something, obviously, that I think was probably a bit of a challenge for Carol. And she's always up for a challenge. She pushes herself. She's hardworking, and she's definitely forging her way in the development area.
Yeah, unquestionably. And I think you can tell from her background, and I'm sure you'll dive quite deeply into that, Chris, that she's always up for that challenge, and she's always willing to push herself to another level, and in some respects has made some mistakes and got some lessons to share, I think, with everybody on what happens when you do push yourself. There are some things that you might look back on and go, well, I wish I'd done this differently. And I think we've all got those lessons, and I'm sure we'll dive into those as part of the debrief.
Absolutely. So we'll be touching on, some of the challenges over the last 6 months. We know there's been some supply issues, and obviously we know we're going through a difficult period at the moment with interest rate rises, inflation. So we'll see how that's affected Carol's business. And for Carol as well, I think what will resonate with some people is that desire to have a bit of a portfolio career. And this really resonates with, the 7 pillars, Kevin, because it's not about relying on one source of income. It's about diversifying across as many asset classes as possible.
Well, never more important than right now when the economic wind is so strong, blowing in every direction, that the more you can build multiple streams of recurring income from different sources. And by now, seasoned listeners will know there are 7 unique and identifiable sources. And if you can just imagine you're building 7 robust income streams around you. Now, you don't need 7, but 7 is the maximum in terms of its broad its broad framework, if you see what I mean, Chris. Then the more you have, the more secure you are, and that any one change or even a number of changes like we're seeing now can irritate you, it can inconvenience you, but it will not devastate you. And wealth is about certainty. And when life is uncertain, you need to create as many sources of that certainty as possible. And I think Carol's recognized that. I think a unique wealth dynamic has helped that, doesn't it? Because I think she refers in the interview, Chris, as being a square. And many people might not know what that actually is. So it's usually when you look at wealth dynamics as a tool, and we use that all the time, don't we, in our academy program. All of our students go through that process, and usually there's an arrow point. You're pointing north, south, east, west, wherever, what's unique to you. So I'm creative and connected, so I'm sort of northeast on the spectrum, but Carol is finely balanced in all of them. So for some people that might think, oh, it's not clear what she is, but because she can turn her attention and turn her, quite sharp brain to many, many different aspects, she's well placed. But of course, sometimes that can mean there's a gap, isn't there, in terms of joint ventures and other relationships, because you need somebody else who has a stronger edge. So again, all of that comes out. Wealth Dynamics is a very powerful tool, Chris. I would encourage anybody, whether they resonate with Wealth Builders or not, it's an independent tool. We think it's an outstanding tool, and we use it every day.
Yes, and I'll link to Wealth Dynamics in the show notes for today, and also the podcast episode, which we did way back when we began in 2019. So if anyone wants to find out more about Wealth Dynamics, how it works, definitely check out that episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to hear from Carol now. She's going to really, I think, kind of give a good overview for anyone who's thinking about development as perhaps a strategy moving forward. So let's head on to our conversation with Carol Robinson. Carol, welcome back to Wealth Talk. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. How are you, Christian?
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, lovely to have you back again. And of course, our listeners will know, or many of our members who are listeners will know you as one of our wealth coaches. But of course, you've got many businesses and you're an investor, and we'll be hearing about all of that today. But specifically, we're really focusing in on obviously the work that you're doing as a developer now, Carol, and that transition that you made from obviously being, more traditional investor to a developer, and seeing how that went, and some of the challenges that, of course, we have perhaps experienced over the last 6 months with the economic changes, and just looking ahead at where you see things going. So, good to talk to you again.
Yes, good to be here as always. And I know one of your challenges with me is to keep me to the straight and narrow. I've always got a lot to say about business and development.
Well, you're very good at obviously helping our members focus as your role as a coach, and you've been doing that for a long time. Maybe it's just touch there, Carol, because obviously outside of investing, you really love helping others succeed as well when it comes to building wealth.
Yes, I do. I'm kind of a bit unique, I think, because obviously the Wealth Dynamics is a key part of the wealth program, and I find it absolutely essential part of, building a business and understanding who you are and your teams and getting the best out of them. And I'm very much a square. I don't really fit into anything as a specialism, and I think I've always beaten myself up about that until I did the Wealth Dynamics, and I realised actually. I understood who I was, which meant why I needed to have almost a portfolio career. So I've got the investment side of things, I'm running a business, developing a business, and I also do a lot of support work, coaching and mentoring. So I kind of, one moment I'm kind of in that supportive area, the next minute I'm kind of doing deals, next minute I'm being, creative on doing the interior design of properties, and then on the other I'm a chartered accountant, and I come from finance and banking, so that steely element is in me as well. So I used to find it a bit confusing. Now I actually celebrate it.
Yeah. So not only have you made the transition recently from investor to developer, but of course making that transition out of the corporate world as well. And when was that, Carol? And what made you decide to make that jump in the end?
Yeah, it was 2015. I was a chartered accountant, and I loved finance. I was in finance and banking, and then I transitioned over to a slightly different industry in the latter couple of years. But it took me around the world. I had an amazing time with it. I did very well. I was in a very senior leadership position. But I always knew there was something else inside me, and I didn't exactly know what it was until I really started investing in property. And then I guess that allowed me to understand more who I was, what I needed. And then that became, the reason I was really doing that was so that when I was overseas, I could come back and have a really beautiful house. I wouldn't be locked out the UK property market. But it took on a life of its own when I really saw how lucrative it can be. And then I realised it could give me options for changing my future life. Now, I would have kept on going in finance probably for quite a long time, but I had a life event that hit me, and it made me question everything that I was doing. And because I had a number of properties behind me, that enabled me to step out and do what I was really meant to do in this life. Yeah.
So, Carol, your role now as CEO of Calm Group, CARM. So tell us about Calm Group. When was that established?
Yeah, that was established in 2019. So what it was, I guess I'm probably one of those self-achievers. So I did the investment, got the tick in the box, and I'm like, what's next? What's next? What's going to challenge me next? And I knew really development was the one I had to really go into. I was intrigued by it because, there's two reasons for that. One is that I love the fact of, I've always been fascinated that you can take a piece of mud and you can turn it into a beautiful home. That whole creative process and the technical design and elements that go into doing that, I found it so interesting. And the second thing is that I just felt it was an industry that lacked a lot of female presence. And I thought it would be really good to try my hand at that. Why is that the case? And is there anything I can do to inspire other women to take that leap into something that is traditionally very male dominated? So that's why I did it. And do you want me to tell you how it happened? How I kind of did the transition?
Yeah, it'd be good to understand, because obviously one of our processes, which we all know and teach to our members of learning anything new, is the wheel of wealth, right? You've got to have some education, You've got to have good support, you've got to have connections, do your due diligence. So how did all of those pieces come together for you, Carol?
Yeah, I think my background absolutely laid the foundations for this. So whilst I'm an accountant, I was very much in the commercial side of finance and banking. So working on strategy, transformations, processes, systems, etc. Plus also doing a lot of the commercial side of reporting to understand how to drive more values out of businesses. So that background helped me understand development quite quickly and what was needed. Now, what had actually happened is that I knew I was lacking construction experience. I mean, people are on building sites for years, or they've got construction degrees, or surveying degrees, etc. I didn't have any of that. I just had the business side. I knew the numbers. I knew how the business side of it worked, but I couldn't. I just knew I'd had such a big gap in the construction that no funder would want to lend to me. Whilst I'm an investor, you're borrowing hundreds of thousands of pounds. When you become a developer, you've got to 10x that. So your exposure, your risk, the complexities of what you do on a day-to-day basis are just in a completely different league. Now, whilst mentally I was ready for that, I knew that I just wouldn't be lent on unless I took it very, very slowly and did one little bit bigger one from the other. And I wanted to go in. So I needed to find a joint venture partner. I didn't know how I was going to find them. Who, what, where, when, I had no idea. So what I tend to do in life is that I go down a path and see where it takes me, and see what opportunities are thrown my way. I try and have my eyes open so that I can see the opportunities coming to me, and I grab them. I try them generally. Sometimes they don't work. I mean, I knew I needed a partner, but a number of times they haven't worked before. But it's always added to my learning. So going down a path, trying something, it's added to my education, it's added to my contacts. One thing has led to another. And the path that I originally thought I was going down, it's led me to something else. So I wasn't afraid of starting the process and seeing where it took me. And that would show me the gaps that I'd have in order to do this. So up in the north of England, that's one of my investment areas. And I found a scheme that I could build 6 flats with. So I did my kind of approached it like an investor. I started getting quotes from building companies, construction companies. And I had a number of them down, and they were all like, yes, we can do that for you, no problem. And the quotes started coming in. But then I had one company come along, and I'd actually met them at a networking event. And they came along, and Mike came along, who is now actually my business partner. So you can see where this went. And he pointed out to me a huge amount of issues with this site. Now, we do develop in London, which are traditionally tight sites, kind of infill sites. This was on another scale. And yes, things could be done, but the costs would have been absolutely extreme. I would have been waylaid by, I think it was about 8-party wall arrangements, you name it. He was just pointing out everything. I was like, wow, I really have a massive gap in my knowledge. But I thought, these guys, if I could work with them, we could really make something together. But you see, I thought they still wanted to just be in construction. But as I got to know them, it really turned out that they'd been trying to get into development. So they were bringing all the construction expertise, but they didn't understand how development worked from the business side of things. And they kept going through this process of going to all these different sites, wonderful schemes, being able to put together certain things to do with the construction side. And then they'd falter with the banks. The banks would say no. They couldn't understand why, or they'd get it through with the banks and then they'd lose the vendor. Oh, it was just a cycle for them that was going down. And you can only spend a certain amount of time throwing money after deals because you've got to pay commitment fees, there's arrangement fees, there's solicitors' valuations, etc. And I was watching, I could see this. So I said to them, look, you're missing probably what I can bring to the table, and you definitely have what I need. But I had to convince them. And I've been very skeptical about joint ventures. Whilst I think it's very, very important in order to go faster and probably give you a massive leg up, you've got to be very careful who you go into business with, because everybody's all pally-pally up front. You never really know what people's true personalities are like and how they deal, with certain challenges until they happen. So I was, whilst I knew I needed a joint venture partner, I was quite skeptical about it as well. So I needed to test them out. So we had lots of like pally-pally, yeah, this sounds great. Yeah, we're going to do great things. But I wasn't willing to just, jump in. So I was doing some holiday lets over in Bath, grade 2 listed buildings, converting those from 1 to 2 beds. Had to be done very sympathetically, as you might imagine. So I asked them, I said, look, I'm kind of interested, but I need to prove what you're like and how it works, from your side. So they did that. And actually, to be fair, I don't think it went very well. They'll agree. It didn't go very well. We had challenges. Like everything. I don't think I've ever done one investment that hasn't gone without its challenges. That's a fact. But you try and control those with your knowledge and your expertise and limit the risk. But it was the way that they dealt with those challenges and issues that we had. And I thought, okay, they've got integrity, they had the same values as I have. So after that, we're like, yeah, right, let's go forth. And they were like, we've got this deal that's going on, but it's faltering. Can you help? And I said, okay, right, hand it over to me. And literally at the 12th hour, I managed to get it over the line. So this was our first deal in 2019. And I said, okay, I've proven myself, you've proven yourself. Right, let's get all the legals drawn up, shareholder agreements, and I was brought in as an equal partner.
Yeah. So I think just to pause for a second and just reflect on the steps there, which I think are important. As you said, you're moving into a new industry and you didn't know everything, and so that decision that you needed to collaborate, you needed to work with someone. Step number one. But then, how do you go out and find that person? Well, there's no surefire method, is there? It's, as you say, have to take that step, that kind of leap of faith, and get out there and start talking to people. And you perhaps were lucky that you met someone pretty quickly, right? Could have taken a lot longer than that. And again, lucky that the first person you kind of felt that relationship could work with actually has turned out to be a business partner. So important steps, but you were quite fortunate there.
And I wasn't really ready, to be fair, to go to the level that we have done so quickly. But as I say, you've just got to take that leap, go down the path, go down the alley. Hopefully it's not an empty one. Hopefully it leads to other things. And that's what I did.
Yeah. And then how did you decide between you in terms of how you were going to structure the business? What were the deals? How did you both agree on the, I guess, the longer term goals of the company?
Yeah, so in fact, originally we started with 3 of us. So we did go through a commercial divorce with one of them. So originally it was 3 of us. And interestingly, I was doing all the business operational side of things, which ranges from everything from planning, building control, sign-offs, all the legals. You have a lot of legals when you're acquiring, when you're selling, other things that might happen with neighbours, party walls, etc. I do all the design, I do all the finance, looking for deals, and I do a lot of the professional team relationship stuff as well. And I also do quite a bit of the procurement and the contracts, etc. Then I had my other 2 business partners that were really all about the day-to-day operations. So it was a bit too heavily orientated on the construction side, actually, because you had those 2 plus site managers. So when we looked at the business and where we wanted to go, we realised that the third business partner had different needs and wants from the business. So we agreed that he wanted to go, we wanted him to go. So it's just Mike and I now. So we agree on 4 schemes a year. And right now we've got the holding company, and under that you have a special purpose vehicle for each scheme. And there's a reason that you do that. One, from a financing perspective, but also from limiting your liabilities on a scheme. And then we also have a construction company as well as part of the group, because we are a self-delivery developer. And one of the reasons that we are a self-delivery developer, when we come on to talk about some of the challenges, is that this limits your risk. So we are the main contractor. So we're not dealing with a third party where you could have disputes and challenges, variations. So we can control all of that. And the banks love the fact that we are a self-delivery developer. So 4 schemes. The way we've got the company structured is very important for limiting your liabilities, etc. The banks love the way that we're set up. And we do about, right now, we've got £14 million worth of schemes in play. Now, that's not an annual turnover because you kind of structure them in a way and you all have different timelines to that. Plus, you've got the sales cycle on top of that. So it's between 14 and 15 million. And then within that, you also have the construction company, which itself is delivering around £8 million worth of schemes over, a couple of years, really. So yeah, that's how we're structured.
So I think already listening to you, Carol, it's clear that the step from traditional investing, let's say residential investment, up to development is quite a substantial step.
It's massive.
Yeah.
I can't say the other word. It's a massive step up.
Yeah. So anyone who's thinking that development, perhaps is the next step for them, what are some of the most important things that you would say they need to consider?
Yeah. Just from talking from my experience, it's, for me, what was one of the most important things was that I did actually have other income coming in. So like any business, when you're starting out, it's cash flow hungry. You might have to prove yourself to investors, to banks, etc. You need to get deals over the line, so you might not be getting the most favourable terms. So really, like Mike and I just hardly take anything from the business at all. So I have all my investment income and the educational, the IP income that comes to me. So I don't worry that I don't really take anything from the business, and that potentially you might be waiting 2 years to, cash in on a sale, because obviously you pay out all your funders first, and it's usually the last unit that's yours. In theory, you should be paying yourself from the scheme anyway. It's called a DMA. But, in these times, we've just cut back on all of that because we're preserving cash, because we have faced some headwinds and we still expect there to be headway wins in the business. So that, for me, that safety blanket allows me to sleep well at night. The other thing is that the banks will always look for personal guarantees, because if anything goes wrong from the length of time a scheme goes on. They can put an interest plasma guarantee on you in effect. So once your interest runs out on the facility, you've got to start putting in every month. And on multi-million-pound deals, one scheme alone, that could be 15, 16 grand a month. And you've got other guarantees about cost overruns, etc. So it's important the bank gets really comfortable, and it could be up to 25% of a scheme that they're looking for. So the fact that I've got properties and other wealth really makes the bank comfortable. So it's another big tick in the box to allow funding to enable schemes to happen. I would say if you've got a background like myself and you're not from the construction side of things, you would need a construction partner. The banks are all about the construction skill, the expertise that you have in there. They want your CVs. They want to know, have you got the capabilities to deliver this? And the banks and junior funders do not like an investor that's jumped up into development, into the size of schemes that we're doing. Because they know that you could have main contractors coming and working with you and they could play you a merry dance. They can. It's just the industry, that we're in. And if there's problems on site and things need to be solved, they might not have the answers as well. So they're looking for that level of expertise. Now, if you've come from a construction background, that's great. You might be lacking on the other side of things. And I would say having somebody, you need to build up a professional team, that can fill all the gaps for you. And of course, that costs money. So you need to be baking that into your schemes as well. If you are happy taking it slower, then it's okay to just do a few little jumps at a time. Just keep going higher and higher on the amount of money that you're borrowing and lending and the schemes that you're doing. And you may not need to go into, full joint ventures like I did. You could just go into a joint venture on that scheme with a construction company, for example. So I've gone in fully joint venture to build a business with a business partner. You can do it scheme by scheme. Those also work, and I see people becoming, quite successful doing that kind of thing. So yeah, I think those are the really big watch outs for me, really. And I think it's very important you have a very, very strong finance person behind you, because where I see a lot of companies not getting it right in this field is that they're not on top of their cash flow. And if they've got multiple schemes going on, they're taking from one scheme to supplement another, and they'll think in their head they're doing it temporarily, and it's not. And then it feeds the machine and it goes down a spiral. And I think it's also very important that you're not really taking money out of a scheme. You've got a lot of money that lands, and it's got to be assigned to the construction over a certain period. And I have seen developers they haven't got that other buffer. And so they're living a certain lifestyle. They've got to keep up a certain lifestyle. And they will be taking too much out of a scheme. So I think those are really, really, really important lessons.
Yeah. Now, the last 3 years, Carol, we've had Brexit and we've had the pandemic. Now we're moving into more uncertain economic times with lots of changes going on. What have been some of the challenges? I know there's been difficulty with supplies and perhaps with tradespeople as well. How has that affected you?
Yeah. So I'll start with a lot of the challenges that we've had. I've probably got about 7. I think I did make a note of them. I'm sure I could probably go on for a lot longer. And I think last time we spoke, I was actually on site, wasn't I, in my high vis? And I'm literally going to go down to site now, because I think we're in a period where, I'm having to roll up my sleeves a lot more than I would have been before. So broadly, I've said our strategy, our goal was 4 schemes a year. We're doing it around the Greater London and Hertfordshire area. We're pulling back we're pulling back to do 2 schemes until things stabilise, and I'll explain why. And broadly, it's around making sure that everything's stable. We've built up our treasure chest of cash, to weather the storms. So I'm going to go straight into, yes, broadly, we've kind of limiting our exposure and reducing the number of schemes that are going on. But I'm going to go quite into 1, 2, 3, 4, if that's okay. So the first thing I've already sort of mentioned in that as a business, we buy sites with planning on it. And that's because we want to remove the risk, the planning risk. Now, yes, we give away quite a bit of money because we're buying things with planning on it, and we know that's where you get a massive premium on taking some land and getting some planning on it. We're a self-delivery construction company, and so we put the goal in goalie. What's important for us is that we're going through developing sites, and we churn through those. That's why we had for a year. In fact, it's quite hard to achieve that, but it's important to us we go through those quite rapidly. If you're doing planning, you might be in planning for 2 years. We did do a little bit of planning, and it was on a site that already had planning, and the planning had lapsed. And I only needed to get the planning rejuvenated, refreshed, and it still took 2 years. So I'm not in the business for waiting for all of that and putting in loads of cash and money up front on that and, having to go to appeals. No, I want to get in. I want to get into the mud. I want to make beautiful houses. So we remove quite a bit of that risk, the timing risk, so we can get straight on. Now, in this climate, it's actually very hard to find schemes that are working. So that's another reason that we've pulled back a little bit. The reason for that is because when you're doing your financials in the most simplest terms, and I think investors will understand this, is that it's the cost to buy the site, it's the cost to do the construction, and then it's what the end value is going to be. Now, the end values have been growing exponentially, which has been great. I think they're stabilising right now. The construction costs have gone up massively. And therefore, really, the cost of the land, because of the construction issues that we'll get into, the cost of the land should be cheaper, really. Yes, it's taken account of some of the increase in sales, but we're taking a timing risk, and we have a view of the economy and the sales prices as to what's going to happen to that. We can't bet on the ever-increasing prices of the gross development value. So in our mind, the vendors need to be adjusting their prices to reflect probably a stabilisation of the end sales prices and the ever-increasing inflation, supply chain issues all around construction. We're not seeing that. That hasn't filtered down into the market. So we're finding it actually quite challenging to make the deals work. And there's obviously a lot of competition, more competition over the deals that do work. Now, on top of that, you've got interest rates that are increasing. So the financing costs on multi-million-pound deals is obviously rising as well. So we need to keep a watchful eye on that as far as buying the schemes. Now, buying the sites with planning is very good because you get a site that's kind of ready to go as soon as you've completed. But the issue is that when you buy from a pure land developer, is that they've put in the basic plans in order to get the planning. We have to take those and put building construction drawings around those technical drawings. And often it's not until you do those that you realise that a certain element of that scheme isn't buildable, or it's going to cost you a lot more. So we do take on that risk. However, we do pass it to our professional team, the architect and the structural engineer, to make sure there's nothing that we're missing when we're doing our financing. Right, I guess going to the crux of everything, we talk around supply chain and costs. So we set up our business in 2019, and we quickly went into COVID Brexit. But we do know that the government supports house builders and construction, because we were one of the industries that they said, just continue. As long as your teams are happy and you're happy, continue. And we did, because we had COVID policies, plus also you're predominantly outside. So, it was quite easy to comply. But on top of that, we'd have had HS2 that's taken all our steel and our concrete, east-west railway links, lots of infrastructure. The government likes to spend on these things when there are challenging times to keep the economy going. So whilst they want all these massive targets on building houses, they're also doing lots of other infrastructure. And there's only a certain amount of skilled labour that can do this type of work. There's only a certain amount of bricks that we make. There's only a certain amount of concrete and cement. And the steel. So our prices have been hyperinflationary. We had one of our schemes, we priced 23,000 in for the basement car park, the roof, 23,000. We were getting in quotes of £115,000. We managed to get it down to £79,000. But oh my God, that's a lot of money to absorb. So, you have to have your contingencies. We used to have 5% contingencies with the banks because they liked all our Mike's got 38 years of experience. Actually, no, I think it's like 35 actually, years of experience. So they were letting us get away with 5%. Now we have to have a minimum of 10%. Kitchens have gone up 68%. That we buy. We make sure we do quite boutique properties, so we make sure we spend on kitchens and things. So that's been very challenging from a pricing hyperinflation perspective in my mind. So a lot of my time and Mike's time were value engineering. But you've got to be careful that you're not shopping for the best price, but then you can't get it to site for a while, which then has a downstream impact on your programme. Now, right now, on one site, I'm paying £1,000 a month on interest because we're just at the end. So we've got all the highest borrowing that we've got. Plus, we couldn't deliver on time because of all those challenges. So we've got a bit of default challenges, interest rates in there too. So there's no point shopping around for the absolute bargain where you saved £1,000, but it delays you for 2 weeks, because then I've just had £14,000 hit to my bottom line. So it's really, really important that you understand the trade-offs of buying cheaply, but the downstream impact, on with the banks and the funding and the cash flow. This last Saturday, I had labourers assigned to a site, and I went, and they're like, "Oh no, we've just been offered £450 per day, so we're not going to be working for you today or the next few days, but we'll come back." And it's that £450 a day when really they're about £150 to £180 a day. So you're constantly having these challenges of trying to persuade people to stay on site and what you can do with them. So then you move on to the financing, because the downstream of all of this is you're delayed on your scheme. So that means that you're going to have extension fees that you've got to pay. You've also got to, every time you do a refinance maybe, because maybe that original funder is like, well, you've had 2 extensions, my credit committee is saying we need to be paid back now. And also it can be cheaper by refinancing, but you've got to go through legal costs for the funder, for yourself. You've got to have revaluations done. You've got other fees, professional fees, administration, due diligence fees that they want to charge. So a developer is having to absorb a lot more of these costs. However, we're going into quite an interesting period, aren't we? Interest rates are going up, so people aren't affording what they thought they could afford a few months ago, 6 months ago. We're Help to Buy on a number of our properties, not all of them, a number of them, and Help to Buy is finishing in October. They've got to get all their paperwork in by the beginning of October. So what does that mean? Is there going to be a frenzy like there was with the when stamp duty was going to come back in? That's what we're hoping, but I'm not seeing that activity, because I think people are a little bit fearful with what's going on with the economy and what they can afford. And Help to Buy have put in more stringent affordability checks as well, literally at the point of exchange to do a second check. So our view is that our base case for the schemes that we're in right now were done during COVID and Brexit. So they were very conservative anyway, like really, really conservative. So we feel quite confident in what our gross development value is right now. But will it go up much more? No, I think there's going to be a stabilisation. And whilst there's a shortage of homes, we do believe that it's going to be held up because of that. And in the areas that we are in, I think we're in the right areas with the right product.
Okay, so obviously development, there's much longer timeframes for things. There's much bigger budgets involved, as we've heard. There's more risk. There's more moving parts. There's lots of things that can happen, Carol. But of course, you're doing this for a reason, which is obviously to help you build your own personal wealth. So whilst there's definitely more challenges by the sounds of things with development over, more traditional residential strategies, what are the benefits and how does that work in with the rest of your wealth plan?
Yes, I think when you think about the wealth plan, we talk about the 7 pillars, etc. So this is very much one of those pillars, but it's like a little ecosystem, I think, when you build a business, because you've got the business itself that will have value ultimately, but also you're drawing money from that business, so then that can be reinvested in some of your other strategies. So one of the key things for me is the pension contributions, so putting that into my SSAS, my small self-administered scheme, which I'm a huge advocate of, because that enables me to be the bank in effect. So it's a cash efficient way of taking, it's a chargeable expense to my business, and I can put 40 grand a year. And I guess if you haven't done any over 3 years, you can put like 120 if you've got that much cash to boost your pension pot. And then I'm able to lend that back to myself. So you would have heard through my conversation very much about being dependent on bankers and funders, etc. Now, we are going to be doing one scheme in the north of England. Yes, it's a smaller scheme. It's 4 houses, but obviously it's a bit cheaper up there. But I'm going to be able to do that all from my SSAS. So that means I become the bank, and I take out a lot of the risk and the extreme high interest rates, and their surveyors, everything that comes with being beholden to a bank, and the stress and the worry of being beholden to a bank. I talked before about, I feel like the Labour, they're my customer, and I also feel like I work for the bank sometimes. So to me, that's very important to get them out, use my SSAS to fund that. It builds up my pension pot. Plus that scheme, those will be a build to rent. So they will be getting added to my property portfolio anyway. And actually, even on a couple of the schemes that we're doing, I always contemplate whether or not I want to build and bring one of them into my scheme, which I can do, because the equity side of it that you would normally be putting in, with your 25% deposit, that can go in as my my director's loan. And so when all the cash comes in from the rest of the scheme, that would then pay down, that director's loan. So I think it's like a self-fueled wealth building mechanism, I believe, having a business. So it opens up a lot of doors. And then on top of that, I know Christian and Kevin, we've been in conversations about doing some more IP around jumping from investor to developer. And, being a relatively small developer, 2 to 4 schemes, let's say, a year, given that we're just pulling back a little bit, and helping people take that jump to be a developer and manage those risks, putting some IP around all of that. And of course, I can't really do it without saying that I've done it myself, can I? So that again, the business, the proof of a successful business and the schemes under my belt will enable me to then do all of the IP around it. So it fuels my investment. It fuels building a business with ultimate value. It gives me day-to-day. It'll give me a big cash pot at the end to invest in other things. It enables me to put money into my SSAS, which builds my pension, but it's also helping my day-to-day business become less reliant on third parties. Yeah, is that enough?
That's great. So, Carol, if anyone wants to kind of watch, the videos, I know you always record and post when you're on site and you're sharing lessons. Where's the best place for someone to connect with you online?
Yeah, if you go to YouTube, you can go into Calm Group, and it's between 2 to 4 videos a month, and it's the video with Mike and I, how we bounce off each other. You can see our 2 different wealth dynamics there and why we actually work well as a team. We try to have a bit of fun with it, talk around the mistakes we've made, some of the things that have gone well, reflected on the week. You can see us literally live on the site, so you can see how they're progressing. So I think they're quite good. It's just like a couple of minutes, little snapshot. So I think that's the best place to kind of see us, get to know us. We've got a website, www.calmgroup.co.uk. And if anybody wants to contact me, that's carol@calmgroup.co.uk. We do have Facebook as well and Instagram, but I'm not as active on that as I should be. So we are in talks to being a bit more prolific on that. And you have to wonder why we're doing that. And that's really to give banks and funders proof that we're a credible company to invest with us. That's the main reason we do all the social media.
Yeah, great. Carol, thanks so much for sharing all of your insights and knowledge today, and best of luck with the future.
Yeah, thanks very much, and I hope to see you soon.
You will. Take care.
Bye, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Right. Very interesting to hear Carol talk about how she's made that transition from investor to developer. Certainly a very different ball game. And there was a lot of things that Carol obviously, I guess, brought up that anyone who's thinking about development as a strategy should really consider. And we touched at the beginning, Kevin, about the importance really of knowing yourself. What are your skill sets? What gets you into flow? But I think when you're moving into any new business, you really have to look at the gaps, and often partnering with someone else is a very smart idea when you're starting out.
Unquestionably the case, Chris. I mean, I think I was recently on a podcast as a guest, and the interviewer said to me, what was the biggest mistake you made on your wealth journey? And I outlined probably 2 of those, but the one that's relevant here was I didn't really seek out the guidance of others. It was almost like DIY. I think I was a bit of a DIYer at the beginning, Chris, and wanted to do things myself. But Carol's been brilliant in that she seeks out connections. She's very open-minded to that, and of course that raises its own challenges and issues. But nonetheless, always looking to work with other people, because the path has always been trodden ahead of you. And when it comes to becoming more able to build your wealth, you have to distance yourself from where you were at the start of your wealth journey. In other words, you get bigger, stronger, better. And that means better education, better support, better connections. And those connections often come from people who are further ahead on that journey than you are. And Smart Lady has picked that one up.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I forgot to read out a review from Trustpilot, didn't I? But it leads us nicely into a review that we've had in recently from Errol. Errol, of course, is one of our Wealth Builders Academy members. And, if you're listening and would like to find out about the Wealth Builders Academy, then head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/academy. You will be able to see everything that we do to help people move from financial insecurity to financial independence. But Errol says, I failed in my previous attempts to grow my wealth, mainly because I lacked support, the right knowledge and a structure. And Wealth Builders have given me those 3 critical elements, which has grown my confidence to take action. And thanks to Wealth Builders, I now have a clear plan. And by following that plan, I know absolutely I will achieve my financial freedom goals.
I think there are two words there, Chris, that I would like to highlight, and thank you for Errol for sharing. One is absolutely confident, right? Those words. And when you know absolutely and you're confident, you will achieve your outcomes. So the thing that holds people back is often some form of fear, right? Something in their brain prejudges the outcome. But if you see that somebody else has already achieved it before you, and you can see a path that's laid out, well, you just follow it. You don't really need to second guess it anymore, because the pathway is already there. Just put one foot in front of the other, so to speak. And Carol's done that. She's always sought out those connections, particularly those who are more ahead than her on the development side, because that's a tough thing. It's a tough step to take from doing residential projects to much more lucrative but potentially more risky projects.
Yeah, and I think there was another important lesson there in that Carol mentioned she had that security of those income streams already coming in, which meant that if her new project, obviously moving into developments, if that took longer or if it perhaps didn't go to plan, it wouldn't leave her in a really, desperate situation financially, because she already had that buffer behind her. And I think sometimes people might not have that, and then it can cause all sorts of issues down the line.
That's a great point, Chris. And I think that's why there's always a milestone on the wealth building journey, from insecurity, as you mentioned at the beginning, from insecurity to independence. But there's a milestone in the middle, isn't there? And we call it financial security, when you've got enough income that you can rely on coming from assets you've already built. And then that gives you not just the freedom to put more time into it, which is often the thing that's the key, particularly for employed people. And we see people negotiate their time, don't they, when they get to security. They get, different ways to bring more time into play, but also to upskill themselves. Because whenever you're doing serious projects like development, it takes longer. It isn't something you can do in 3 weeks, in 6 weeks, and 9 weeks. These things can take 18 months, 2 years, and even longer in some cases. So you need to have the income, because it takes so long for that high profit to or potentially high profit anyway, to come back to you. And the other point I think was good about what Carol was saying, because these projects do take a long time. And one of the biggest costs in development, Chris, is the funding costs. And the more that you can take control, or the more that you can reveal sources in your life where there's funding, both internally in your own finances and externally with private investors, and becoming investable. And we've done podcasts on that before, Chris, as well. I think getting access to funding is also critical at a time like now, when we're seeing interest rates on the rise, where banks are taking a bigger margin, underwriting is getting tougher. We're actually seeing lenders withdraw schemes, and interest rates rising. So it means there's more pressure on the funding of something, particularly over a longer period of time. So as she's done, and like so many of our Academy members have done, Chris, they've used their pension as a source of funding through the vehicle we've often shared called SSAS, or the Small Self-Administered Scheme, basically taking complete control of your pension and removing it from the industry, and treating it like a business for yourself. And I think it's a very, very powerful strategy. And as an accountant, she recognized that. And immediately when she saw the benefit, saw it was a no-brainer, and took advantage of that. And then that's standing her in good stead, as indeed it's had for many thousands of people now that we've helped on that journey.
Yes, so hopefully there we've been able to, uncover a little bit more behind the scenes of life as a developer, and that transition from, other more traditional property investing strategies. Mm-hmm. And as we know, Kevin, everyone might follow the same recurring revenue roadmap, but everyone's plan will be individual, and it all begins with knowing yourself and wealth dynamics, as we mentioned, and the outcome, your end, reason why. So many factors determining, obviously, the exact, way that you'll reach your financial independence. But a clear structured process that we certainly can teach people.
Well, I think that's the bedrock of the whole thing, Chris. What always fascinates me about how people build their wealth, when we created the 9-step recurring revenue roadmap, and it looks like, oh, well, it's 9 steps and everybody follows those 9 steps. But in reality, it's the complexion and the color that people bring with their own relationships, other people's relationships, their own differences, and the multiple ways they're doing things at the same time. I often liken it to, imagine, you had 100 school kids in a room, and all you had was a room full of Lego and said, build me a house. And you've got 2 hours and just go play and do it. And you get houses and they'd all have a similar construction, but they'd all be completely different. The bricks would be different, the windows would be different places. Wealth is just like that. It's like building Lego. It's like everybody's different, and why it's so fascinating for us, Chris, to pull those Lego bricks apart and try and share that with other people so that they can see that for themselves, because we all see life and wealth through a different pair of eyes. And often it's better when somebody else can show you what they can see, because then you're seeing wealth in the 360, not just the usual angle straight ahead of you that you're looking at things, which is why we call it tunnel vision. You're looking at it like this, but there's everything around you that other people can bring to the table. So that's an old man waffling on about the importance of connection and the importance of community. And I think now my lesson, don't be a DIYer, don't be a wealth waster. That's a new one, Chris. I'll talk to you about that later. Somebody said that to me just the other day. Kevin, I've been a wealth waster all of my life, not a wealth builder. Never had that before. I'm taking that one, and we'll be using that to try and help people focus. And actually talking about that, we are focusing, aren't we, at the moment, trying to help people in these troubled times to focus on trying to find, make, save, and compound their way out of this trouble. And I'm sure you can signpost people to the challenge, Chris, that while it might be running for 6 weeks, there's no reason for anybody not to jump on it, because we recorded everything and those lessons of the community and their savings, their unique things that they save money on, or they find ways to make more money. They'll come rushing into your life that you can pick up, things that we never even dreamed people would do, Chris. And that's what still makes it fascinating for me after all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. Still time to join us in the challenge. wealthbuilders.co.uk/challenge. Head there, check out all the details, jump in, and we will see you there. And Kevin, we will be catching up same time, same place next week.
We will. And until then, my friend, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.